we are living in a digital world, and everywhere you go you can hear one thing, that is data, data and data. When we are talking about the international trade, international relations, geopolitics or otherwise as well, when we are talking about the science related advancements, one thing is common, that is data. Now it is safe to say that data is the new oil, and our government has taken the cognizance of the data related issues long back. In 2023 they have come up with the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, but the act could not be implemented till yet. Now the government recently has come up with the draft. We will be talking about that. My name is Lalit Soni and you are watching Drishti IAS. In this program of InFocus, we will be talking about the data protection and related issues. Recently, government has come up with the draft Digital Personal Data Protection Rules 2025, wherein they have mentioned some of the rules, and we will be talking about the key highlights and the implications of such data related rules as well as the data security. Now let's start our discussion over here. Today we will be talking about these few things over here. That is, first we'll be talking about the news, then Digital Personal Data Protection Rules Draft 2025. We will be talking about this draft. Obviously this has not been implemented yet. There will be a committee which will be talking about that. There will be various stakeholders which will be talking about that, and ultimately after that we will be seeing that there will be implementation. Now key highlights of the draft rules we will be talking about, then significance of these draft rules we will be seeing. In the end, there will be a MCQ for your practice which you have to attempt and answer to me in the comment box. Now before moving further, I would like to tell you that we are offering IAS Foundation course for prelims as well as mains at our offline center at Noida sector 15. We are starting this batch for English medium from 9th of January 6 p.m. and for Hindi medium that will be starting on 16th of January 11:30 a.m. For more details you can call on this number, that is 87501 87501, or you can directly visit the center. Address is given over here and you can get yourself enrolled over there as well. Now let's move further and start with the discussion over here. First we are talking about that why this particular topic was in news. So here you can say Draft Digital Personal Data Protection DPDP Rules 2025 issued by the central government to implement the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023. As I told you that government has come up with the act in 2023. They have passed it from both the houses. The president has given the assent, and then it could not be implemented till yet because the rules has not been drafted. Because when we are talking about the implementation, you know that there is a broad framework which is given by the act, but for the, you can say, administrative functions or the you can say implementation of the particular act, there are certain rules which will be required, that will be created by the bureaucracy. Okay, now recently they have come up with the rules and that rules has been put forward. Now objective here is to provide a legal framework for data fiduciaries to protect personal data and penalize the breaches. Now here there is a term which has been used, that is data fiduciary. We will be talking about that term in the further slides. Now Draft Digital Personal Data Protection Rules 2025, here you can see there was this act in 2023 which has come to enforce and safeguard the personal data and the regulate its processing. Now there is one more thing which is you can say used over here, one more term which is used over here, that is personal data. Now data can be of various kind when we are talking about the specific nature. So here two types are there. One is your personal data, second is non-personal data. We will be talking about that later. Okay, so this particular act is related to the protection of the personal data, receives presidential assent but yet to be implemented. Now draft rule for 2025 aimed at operationalizing the act. When we are talking about the implementation, as I told you, for the administrative functioning and the implementations, rule will be bought. Okay, so these rules are there. These draft rules has been put forward by the central government. Balance data security, privacy and the ease of doing business, focus on the selective data localization and the compliance mechanism. So all these terms we will be talking about over here, that is data security, privacy, ease of doing business, selective data localization. Here this term data localization, we will be talking about that as well. Now moving further, here we will be talking about the different kind of data. As I told you, this particular act is related to the personal data, and there is another kind, that is non-personal data. Here you can see when we are talking about the personal data, that means that a kind of data which can give away your identity. Okay, so that is personal, and the data which does not have any particular indications of the identity, that is non-personal data. Okay, now let's say if there is when we are talking about the population census. Okay, now if there is a person who is coming to your family and they are asking you about the information, that particular chart of the information is containing the personal data. Okay, so that can be considered as the personal data, wherein he is asking you about it and noting down the details. Okay, like name, age, father's name, you can say other than that sex, etc. All these things which they are asking, these are personal data. Now he is tabulating in a particular format. Now this is your personal data which he is having. Now coming to the next part, when all the data is been collected and then they say that the population of India has increased from this period to this period. Now that particular data is also data that is not personal data, because it is not giving away any identity over here. This is giving away a trend. Okay, so that is the difference between the personal data and the non-personal data. Here you can say, when we are talking about the personal data, it contains characteristics of a person used to identify them. So basically there is an element of identity which is there. Data related to the finance, health, political beliefs, sexual orientation, caste, tribe, biometric, intersex, transgenders, when we are talking about the religious denominations, all these things are basically your personal data. Now coming to the next, that is non-personal data. So here you will be seeing that there is a set of data which is not giving away your identity. You can say usually any set of data that does not contain personally identifiable information. It also includes data set which was personal data earlier but now anomalized. Okay, so if there has someone has taken your personal data, let's say census only, they are taking the personal data but now they are not making it public. They are making the trend public. They are telling you that how many literates are there, how much population has increased, what is the birth rate, what is the death rate. All these data are being given, but the thing is the personal data, the name of the people, the age, sex related data are not being, you can say, publicized by the government. Okay, so that is why they are become you can say kept secret, and these are considered as the non-personal data. Okay, now when we are talking about the various companies, okay, so they will also be taking your data, they will be analyzing it, but there will be, there will be some kind of restrictions which will be there. Now that restrictions are basically talked about in this Personal Data Protection Act. Okay, now let's move further. Data fiduciary, that was this term which was there. So that term is basically any person who alone or in conjunction with the other person determines the purpose and the means of processing the personal data. Now let's say you have given data to someone. Okay, now that particular person who is deciding that what is to be done with this particular data, what is the purpose of collection of this data, and the person who is holding this data, that is basically your data fiduciary. Okay, again, any person who alone or in conjunction with the other person determines the purpose and the means of processing the personal data, that is data fiduciary. Okay, coming to the next one, data processor. Any person who processes the personal data on the behalf of the data fiduciary. Now let's say there is a company A. Now this company A is basically a, let's say, food delivery company. Okay, now this company has asked you for your address, name, phone number, okay, etc, etc. Now they have collected the data. This company is holding the data, but then they will be transferring this data to a particular, you can say, company X, which is basically processing this data. Now processing means that now this particular company who has taken the data, now they are trying to understand what is the behavior of the consumers over here, from where how many orders has been taken, from where which kind of particular, you can say, dish has been ordered. All such processing can be done by the data processor. Okay, then comes to the data principal. Data principal is the person whose data has been collected. Okay, means the individual to whom the personal data relates and where such individual is a child, including the parents or the lawful guardian of a such child. Okay, so basically they are saying that if there is a child, so it will be considered that there is a lawful guardian whose data is considered, that person will be considered as the data principal. Now other than that, when we are talking about this Mr. X, yeah, Mr. P, whose data has been taken, the address, name, phone, that particular person will be considered as the data principal. Okay, so these are the three terms which is there: fiduciary, who is determining the purpose; processor, who is processing the data; and principal, whose data has been taken. Okay, now let's come to the rules and the key highlights of the rules. Okay, data localization framework. Now central committee will be there. They will be formatting a committee which has not been established yet. So there will be a central committee which recommend the type of personal data required localization. Localization means that storing the data inside our own country. Okay, localization. Okay, so basically what happens is that there are various multinational companies which are there. They are collecting our data, and their parent companies are outside our country. So they are saying that you are supposed to, you can say, store the data in India only. Okay, now right now in this bill they are talking about the critical data. The critical data is to be stored in India, and other than that they can take data as well. Okay, now this is basically called as the localization. Now there will be a central committee which will decide that what kind of data will be staying in India or what kind of data can be taken outside. So that is what will be the working of this particular committee. Now it collaborates with the ministries, regulators to ensure the industry friendly policies. Sorry. So when we are talking about the industry friendly policies, so let's say if RBI is there, okay, and RBI wants to have some specific kind of data to be analyzed and processed in a particular way, okay, let's say finance related data, so that can be done. Herein the committee will be working with the RBI, okay, so that is the role of the committee over here. Then selective restriction on the data flow, critical data to remain within India. As I told you, some data which is very important, strategic, these data cannot go outside the Indian territory, okay, so it will remain within the Indian jurisdiction for the security reasons. It avoids the blanket localization. Not all data can be restricted, so they are saying that there is some critical data which we are restricting inside the Indian jurisdiction, otherwise other data can be going outside. That is to make sure that there is a ease of flow of the data or ease of doing business, okay. Avoid blanket localization to prevent the disruption to the cross border data flow. Now significant data fiduciaries, as I told you, data fiduciaries are those companies which are holding the data for a particular purpose and they are deciding the purpose, okay. Now companies which are very big and significant, these will be considered as the significant data fiduciaries. These are large entities like Meta, Google, managing the sensitive data assessed based on the volume and risk to the sovereignty, security and the public order. On the basis of that, you can say government will be deciding that which entities are considered to be significant data fiduciaries, okay. So this is the first highlight. Now coming to the second one, data breach reporting obligations, okay. Now they are saying that if there is a fiduciary who is having some kind of data and there is a breach which has been reported, now in that case they have to tell the government as well as the principal over here, okay. So here you will be seeing that affected individuals to be informed without delay whose data is there and the person who will be impacted by this particular data breach. Such individuals can be informed. Second is, in this particular notification there will be certain things which has to be included, that is nature, timing, extent of the breach, consequence for the users and the mitigative actions which has been taken by the fiduciary over here, okay. So these things will be there in that particular notification. Coming to the next thing, you have to inform Data Protection Board of India as well. Now this board has not been you can say established yet, but there is a provision in the act, okay. So within 72 hours you have to tell this board as well. Now there are two things: one, you have to tell this board, and second, you have to tell the individuals whose data has been you can say breached. Then coming to the next thing, if you are not doing that, if you are failure to provide any kind of safeguard to the personal data, in that case there will be a fine up to 250 crore rupees, okay. So that is something which has been added over here in the rules. Now coming to the next one, child data protection provisions. If there is a children who is using the phone, who is providing the data, so for that you have to verify from the parents as well, okay. So here parental consent is required. Companies to verify parental or the guardian consent before processing the children's data. Now mechanisms such as the digital lockers for the verifications are allowed. Here they have not tell you that what mechanism you are using, they have just told you that you need to take the parental consent, okay. Now how you will be taking, that is up to you. So that is flexible for the companies. No uniform system has been imposed over here addressing the implementation concerns, okay. So basically here companies are free that how they want to do that, okay. Now moving further, next one is transparency in the data processing. So here user notification will be there. Clear standalone notices required before the processing personal data. Notice must include itemized data being collected, purpose of the processing, use of the data for the goods and services. So basically what they are saying that there is a fiduciary is giving data to the processor. Now what is the objective of the processing, that should be you can say given over here. Itemized data being collected, whatever data is being collected, that you have to tell that this is the data which we are taking for the processing. Second, purpose of the processing and the use of the data for the goods and services, what kind of goods and services you will be using the data. So these things you have to tell the you can say principal over here whose data is there. Then coming to the next one, if the user does not use the online services for a longer period of time, user's data must be deleted after 48 hours of a prior notice. So basically let's say there is a Mr. A and there is a company, that is X company. Okay, now X company has taken data of Mr. A. Now it has been 1 month, or let's say some 1 or 2 months, or whatever provisions will be there. So this particular person has not used the service from the X company. Okay, in that case his data will be erased by by giving a notice of 42 hours. You will be sending a notification that you have not availed our services, and in the next 42 hours we will be deleting your data. Okay, so that kind of provision has also been made over here. Now moving further, significance of the draft rule here. So one is the data security and the privacy. Since we are dealing with the personal data, it is important to make sure that we are providing you a security, because data is something which can be used or misused even. Okay, so that is why it is important that you are providing data security. It strengthens mechanism to safeguard personal data against the breaches. There can be cyber breaches, etc., which are there. So considering that, also data security is quite important. Enhance accountability among the data fiduciary, because we are holding them accountable. If there is a breach, you have to tell us. If there is you can say, if there were no enough safeguards were not there, in that case also you will be penalized over here. There will be a penalty, that is, we have already seen that up to rupees 250 crore that can be there. Okay, then sovereignty and the security, we are talking about the localization. We are trying to make sure that the critical data is staying inside our country. Okay, now why is that? Because considering the sovereignty and the integrity of the country, that is why they have actually said that we will be storing the critical data inside our country. Okay, sovereignty and the security. Localization ensures critical data is protected within the national jurisdiction, aligns with the global best practices for the selective restrictions. Now restrictions are selective because we have to make sure that there is a trade, there is, you can say, cross border data flow that is also there, and we have to ensure the security as well. Okay, so there we have to go for the you can say selective restrictions. User empowerment, transparent data processing, wherein we have seen that all the requirement has to be tell that why we are using this data, what kind of data is being used, and how why it is being processed, and what is the objective of processing. All these things has to be told to the person. Transparent data processing policies empower the user to make informed decision, mitigate risk associated with the data misuse. Industry friendly approach, wherein we are not going for a blanket data restrictions or blanket data localization. So that is why we can say that is industry, you can say, friendly as well. Avoid blanket localization to mandate support ease of doing business, flexible timelines, and the provisions for the smoother transactions. Okay, so now this is about the rules which has been made. We have seen that there are few things which are to be remembered by the aspirants over here. First, this terminology is important. What is personal data, what is non-personal data, what is data fiduciary, what is data processor, what is data principal, all these things are important. Other than that, we have seen that what are the data localization related framework which is there, and we have seen that data breach, in the case of data breach, there are certain framework which has to be followed. In case of data which is belonging to children, you have to take parental consent, which is also there. There is a provision, if you are not providing adequate safeguards, there will be a penalty of 250 crore that can be there, up to 250 crore. And government has given 2 years to the institutions or the companies to implement these rules. Okay, whenever it will be there. Okay, so that is what has been given in the draft rules. Now in the end, there is a practice question for you. Who will be responsible for recommending the types of personal data that should be localized in India? RBI, the central committee formed by the government, Data Protection Authority of India, Ministry of Finance. Okay, so you can attempt this question and answer to me in the comment box. With that, I would like to take your leave. If you have not subscribed the channel, please subscribe it. Have a nice day. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.